Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, best-selling novelist Isabel Allende. The democratic race which goes on and on. A clash about homeopathic medicine and Wally Jumblatt on the latest power struggles in Lebanon. But first, South Africa, and we go to the comeback kid of South African politics, Jacob Zuma. A former deputy president, Jacob Zuma was fired in 2005 after he was linked to a multi-million-pound arms scandal. 3 years on, he's on course to become South Africa's next president after being elected leader of the ANC in December. Like Nelson Mandela, Jacob Zuma spent years of his life, 10 in his case, imprisoned on Robben Island. I started by asking him what were his memories of those days.
Well, there are everlasting memories. It was the time I was still a very young man, very much full of the visions and energy and everything. And indeed, to be arrested, detained for 90 days, there was a law that was called 90 days detention without trial, and then tried and convicted for 10 years. It was not a small measure, but it was something that we were expecting as freedom fighters. Because at that time, if you recall, the ANC had moved from a non-violent policy of conducting the struggle. We had decided to engage in the armed struggle. And we who were part of the soldiers of the ANC of Umkhonto, we knew that that decision was a decision that will involve even our lives, will involve prison, it will involve every sacrifice, the supreme ones. So when it happened, we were expecting it, so we're ready to go through it with determination.
And then later on, you spent time in Mozambique with Robert Mugabe. You knew him quite well there, did you?
Yes. I was in Mozambique first. He came later to Mozambique after they were released in Rhodesia. They were allowed to come out to participate in the negotiations that were taking place then in Geneva. But the headquarters of Zanu-PF was in Mozambique. So yes, he was in Mozambique. We were all in Mozambique.
And he was very different, people say, in those days to the way he is now. He was younger, of course. But
yes, of course, he was still younger. When he came to Mozambique, much as he was one of the leaders of Zanu-PF, but he was not occupying a specific position at the time. I think it was during the time that he had come out and he was in Mozambique that he was then elected into the presidency of Zanu-PF and remained one. Definitely, he was still a young man and leading a guerrilla army and a national liberation movement, participated a great deal in the negotiations here in Lancaster House, together with his colleague Joshua Nkomo and other leaders. Certainly, we were closer at the time.
It's interesting, quite apart from today, that he had about 10 years or perhaps more as leader of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, in which people said he was doing a great job, and then something went wrong, and now they have 150,000% inflation and things like that. What went wrong? Did he change, do you think?
Well, I wouldn't be able to know what actually went wrong. Certainly, I'm aware that when Zimbabwe was liberated, Zimbabwe in Southern Africa was almost like a shining star. Everybody recognized that Mugabe was doing very, very well. But at some point, I think things changed after almost close to 2 decades. It was the first decade, it was very fine. I think it was closer to the completion of the second decade that things began to change. I would imagine that the situation in Zimbabwe did not get better. At that point, what had been done for the people of Zimbabwe, I think, began to strain the kind of the situation in Zimbabwe, and then people began to be dissatisfied and started protesting.
And in fact, while you've been here, I think you said that you agree with the Zimbabwe bishop saying that there is a danger of genocide in Zimbabwe.
Well, we've just got those reports, and I think they were shown even this morning on the TV that violence has started in Zimbabwe. And I'm agreeing that that cannot be allowed. That should be condemned. I don't think we should allow a situation where innocent people become victims as a result of the failure of people to do their job, because I think the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission should have conducted elections, counted the votes, and at the end of counting, announced the votes. What is now happening is actually as a direct result of the failure of the Electoral Commission to announce the results. It is now leading up to violence. And I think innocent people are now being injured as a result of people who are given very specific responsibilities because they are failing to undertake their responsibilities. The impact is on the ordinary people who become victims. Yeah. I think that cannot be accepted.
What can be done? It's obviously got more serious recently.
I think the SADC, in the first instance, I think they should immediately do something. I can't necessarily prescribe, but I believe that because there is an impasse there, which is between the two parties, at the end, if we do nothing, the situation is going to get worse. I think the two really should be made to meet and discuss to sort out the problem. And we should help as a region, the heads of state who met before. I think we need to take an urgent action so that we do not allow more lives to be lost in Zimbabwe. Because if the situation is allowed, you might end up with many deaths, and I don't think we want that.
And in the current situation, do you think that if Zanu and Mr. Mugabe tried to annul the election and keep the results of the election secret and have a new election, that wouldn't be right, would it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You see, that will introduce a wrong culture. That wherever there are elections, if we are not happy with the elections, we then annul the elections and say, let us re-elect. It can't be right. It shouldn't be accepted.
So it can't be right?
Absolutely, it can't be right.
And do you think Mr. Mbeki has got to get more involved?
He is involved, I would imagine so. Because the crisis is still there, he has to be part of it. Because he was appointed by SADC to mediate. And I think that's his first call for him to be there. But I think, given what is happening, you might need to augment the Mbeki effort by actually involving other leaders in the region in a very specific way.
And the Wall Street Journal, that very interesting article about you, said you are arguably the most powerful politician in Africa. Arguably the most powerful politician in Africa. That's quite something, isn't it? You've come a long way from those days at Robben Island. And so has South Africa.
Yes. Well, I don't know. The journal must be having its own views about that matter. I don't think I'm qualified to comment on the matter.
Well, it's a good thing to comment on. The Kofi Annan said, didn't he, somewhere, where are the leaders in the region, which we've touched on already. But,
yes.
Yeah, because he's been a helpful force and so on.
Yes, definitely. He has just helped in Kenya, and I would imagine when he finally concluded the matter in Kenya, the regional leaders got involved, the Tanzania got involved, etc. So that's the question I'm sure he was asking, and I think given the gravity of the situation, I think the regional leadership must do something.
And in terms of people talking about power sharing or coalitions and so on, it's difficult to imagine a situation being desirable in which Mr. Mugabe and Mr. Tsvangirai shared power. That's almost impossible, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Given the problem at the moment, what do you do? I don't know whether there is any clear option. What I think we should avoid is a situation getting into a violent moment. We should avoid that. But if we are to avoid that, I don't think we could therefore avoid making the two parties to participate in searching for the solution. In the light of what has happened, they should be part of it. Probably look at what people are saying in terms of proposals they're making for the sake of Zimbabwe, for the sake of the people of Zimbabwe.
What's going to happen in terms of your impending trial on charges of which you said are politically motivated, of corruption and so on and so forth? You'll just carry on your current post, and if the thing was delayed, you'd go on, carry on, become president of the country, and nothing would be affected unless there was a verdict against you. You'll just carry on as if it's not happening, will you?
Absolutely. All citizens in South Africa don't stop what they are doing because they are charged. Our constitution is very clear that when we are charged, it does not necessarily mean we are guilty. We are innocent until the court finds otherwise. And there is no reason, therefore, that we should stop what we are doing because we are charged. Because you see, if we allowed that, you would be allowing a situation where people, if they don't like other people, they can just make allegations. And they know that once you make allegations, they'll stop what they're doing. I don't think we should worry about that. We will take the necessary decisions once the court pronounces in whatever way.
And you're very confident about which way it will pronounce?
I'm confident of that.
Of that, in that situation? And,
absolutely.
And when you become president, assuming all of that happens, how you emphasise that there is a continuity about the ANC, obviously. Yes. But obviously there will be differences of inflection and so on between you and President Mbeki and so on. What would be the main difference between your two leaderships?
Well, I'm not sure that I could sit here and say that. Really, I think it would be really very presumptuous of me to sit and say, oh, no, this is how Mbeki has done it, I will do it this way. I don't think that's how I would want it to handle the matters. Mbeki is a comrade and colleague who have worked together. He has had an opportunity given by the ANC to lead the ANC. He has led the ANC in the manner in which he has. And at this time, the ANC has given me an opportunity to lead the ANC. And I think I'm going to lead the ANC as I think the ANC want me to lead it.
But what would you like most of all to achieve as President of South Africa, assuming you become President?
Assuming that the ANC decides that I become the President of South Africa, really is to achieve what the ANC stands for: a prosperous South Africa, a united South Africa, a South Africa with a thriving economy, a South Africa that will be out of the trap of poverty, a South Africa with a population that will be educated, skilled, to be ready to handle their country.
And a South Africa that will almost certainly also continue beating us at cricket.
Absolutely, and absolutely. With this cricket forceful team that beats everybody else, it will continue to do so. Rugby as well will beat all of them, and will try them in soccer as well in 2010.
Well, that's a splendid pledge.
Absolutely.
One other thing, you must be voted, I was just reading something, is it that you must be Father of the Year or whatever? Do you really have 18 children?
Yes, I do.
My God.
Why to say, oh God?
My God, because I just think, I'm very delighted to have 3, and that's pretty full time, as it were. and 6 times as many must be
quite something.
Slightly exhausting, yeah. What's your advice to being a good father?
Love your kids. Absolutely. It's a critical element. Love your kids.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's been a great joy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Jacob Zuma there. In a minute, I'll be joined from Beirut by Walid Jumblat. See you then.